My name is Amy Loomis, and I'm with the Morgantown Area Partnership. This morning we have our Learning Lab presentation with Grant Stewart of Performance Matrix and Strategic Partners International. Grant is going to be presenting Leading Through the Power of Deliberate Intention. We'll be moderating questions through the chat box. And also we'll be recording this presentation so that if you would like to refer to it later or would like to share with a friend, you'll be able to get a copy of the presentation, as well as we will stop the recording at the end of the presentation so you can ask questions freely. And there are some interactive components of this presentation as well. With that, I'm going to welcome Grant and hand the show off to him. Thanks for joining us, Grant.
Good morning, all. Thanks for joining us to find out what this is all about. A couple things. I'm just going to ask a couple questions. Feel free to enter the information in the chat if you want to reply. If you have any questions, like Amy said, she'll handle that at the end. I'll do my best to answer any of those questions. I just wanted to share that the information I'm about to share with you is some of the best information available on leadership, intention, getting the results you want, the business you want, living the life you want. And I can say that because none of the information is mine. All the information we share is research-based, scientific, and proven. So if you have any questions about that, I can't help you because, like I said, research-based and proven. I am going to go down the rabbit hole a couple times. This information may or may not be familiar to some of you. Again, know that it is proven and scientific, and just bear with me. Let it pass through you. Don't judge it yet. And when you get to the end of it, if it doesn't work for you, then just go on about your day. If it does, great. If you have any more questions, feel free to give me a call. My number will be at the end of this, and I'll be glad to field those calls after the session as well. So let's give it a go. What if every communication has a purpose? It does. Okay, there we go. I'm getting it to work. So the question is, and I'd like you to write down what you think the purpose of any communication, that can be a smile, a nod, a laugh, an answer, a question, silence. What do you think the purpose of any communication is? And if we get any of those questions, if we get any comments, Amy, feel free to read those off. If we don't, I'll just move on. By the way, that information is in our leadership and coaching materials. And I asked that question, and it's in bold print. It's larger than most of the information that's there, and most people don't get it. I mean, it's like the arrow's pointing, this is the answer, and most people don't get it. So if you don't get it, that's okay.
We have some answers in the chat box, Grant. Mutual understanding, connecting with someone for the purpose of making someone's life better in some capacity. And communication creates acknowledgement, action or reaction.
Yes, yes. And so those are basically, a lot of those are really right around it. So the purpose of any communication is to elicit some sort of behavior, response, or action. What that means is that it can be conscious or below the conscious level, verbal, nonverbal, even not making a decision is making a decision. So what is it, whether it's a conscious result or action we want, we can make that happen, or below the conscious level, we don't even know. Let me just give you an example. My guess is that, especially if you have a teenager, you've seen this before. The idea behind rolling of the eyes, we don't know what that is. It can be, it's a stupid dad joke. I can't believe you expect me to do that. I don't want to be a part of this. I refuse to wear anything like that. I will never go to that school. It can be infinite number of answers on how you approach that. But the deal is, it is a communication, and that my guess is that all of you have rolled your eyes on numerous occasions, and my guess is you've been experiencing people who have rolled their eyes on numerous occasions. dollars to donuts, that not one person said, you know what? I'm going to, because of that information, because of what you said or because of what you did, I'm going to roll my eyes now. It is a subconscious, below the conscious response and communication, and there is a purpose behind it. Now, what I want to do is I want to share with you an example of a deliberate intention and how that deliberate intention is able to elicit a response that is also an intention, a purpose, but it's below the conscious level. Years ago, I was coming back from Mexico. A friend of mine had lived in Mexico, and when we came back, we were coming back on a small road into Arizona. And the border guard looked something like the guy on the left, you know, jovial kind of guy, younger guy. He walks up to me just very nonchalantly and very casual, kind of had a sense of joy and play, but he steps into my space just a little bit. He's in control. He says, where'd you go? What'd you do? Again, he has a sense of play about it. What'd you do? Who'd you go with? What was the purpose of your trip? What'd you bring back? And then he says, and this is a quote, do you have any alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, dead bodies? Now, my response was, since I had none of those, was kind of goofy. No, duh, of course I don't have any of those. So he allowed me to go through, back to home, back to the United States. Had I gone no, the intention, which would not have been deliberate for me, was an unconscious response, a stimulus response, that he got what he wanted from me and would have gotten what he wanted from someone else had they had any alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, dead bodies. So that's the difference between a deliberate intention of achieving what you want. No matter what the answer would be, you still get an answer that is an accurate answer. And my stimulus response answer was, you know, really all I wanted to do is get back in the country, so I allowed that to happen. So what's the difference between a thought? We have all of those thoughts that are going through when he's interviewing us. What's the difference between a thought and an intention? Go ahead and, if you have an idea on what that is, go ahead and write that down. And just interrupt me, Amy, whenever you get a few of those. Just so you know, I read this in about 2008 in a psychology book. We have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, every day. They're pretty much the same thoughts we had yesterday, last week, last month, last year, even 10 years ago. And I've read that information in a variety of documents since then. But here's the deal. We have one brain and two minds, the conscious and the subconscious. The frontal cortex is the conscious part of the brain, but that's only 5% of our behaviors. 95% of our behaviors are functioning below the conscious level as a result of our early conditioning. In other words, before the age of 6, our brain is in a theta brainwave pattern. And we're downloading all that information over and over and over again. And there's no analysis. There's no alpha or beta brainwave patterns. It's just stuff that's going in. So when the 4-year-old drops the F-bomb, we want to blame the 4-year-old, but we don't have that. We can't do that. So what's going on here is we have thoughts. And it's been referred to years ago, like centuries ago, as monkey mind. Monkeys go from branch to branch to branch to branch to branch randomly, and our thoughts go from thought to thought to thought to thought to thought. Why it's called monkey mind. They're random, they're unintentional, they're not deliberate, they're not focused. They're often uncontrollable. Intention, on the other hand, has aim, direction, purpose, is deliberate. It aligns our mental, physical, emotional, and if you like, spiritual, all in alignment, which obviously gives it great power. Which would you rather have, monkey thoughts or clearly defined intention and goal. So we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Would you like every thought that you have to become a reality? Let me put it this way. If your best friend said to you some of the things you say to yourself, how long would they be your best friend? I can't do that. I'm not good at that. She's so much better at that than I am. I'll never be able to, ... So thoughts are things, but not yet. However, when we have repetitive thoughts like the 60 to 70,000 ones a day that are all over the place, and they say things like, you're not very good at this, you can't do that, we believe it, and it becomes a reality. My business partner said, thoughts are eternal until we unthink them. So if I think I can't do it, it's eternal until I change that thought. So how are we getting there? I want you to think about something that you are most proud of in your life. Something that you accomplished, and are most proud of. And I do want you to write down a couple of those just so we can get some examples. So take your time. Do we have any, Amy?
We have someone saying, home birthing my 7th child unexpectedly. Lost 132 pounds over 3 years. Family and friends.
Okay, so think about what was involved in all three of those. You've gotten the result that you want, obviously. My guess is that none of those were easy peasy. There was a lot of focus. There was a lot of sometimes struggle, but there was also a lot of heart. There was a lot of passion, a lot of emotion that was involved in making that happen. So here's the deal. We have thoughts. We hold intentions. So we can have those thoughts, they're all over the place, but when we hold intention, we are in that alignment that I talked about earlier. Here's what Wayne Dyer says about intention: a force in the universe that allows creation to occur. This fellow, Russell Acuff, is a systems guy, a world-renowned management consultant systems guy. And he says, without changing our patterns of thought, we will not be able to solve the problems we created with our current patterns of thought. In other words, when you're in a hole, stop digging. The answer is not there. We have to go to another level. We have to go to an imagination above where we are now. So if we have those random thoughts, they're the same. Intention gets us to another plane, if I'm making sense. Oops. So the clearer we are about how our thoughts affect our reality, the more likely we are to up the ante in making our thoughts more deliberate. But why is it so hard? If you're in fear, you can't be in faith. If you're in hate, you can't be in love. The true intention will come through. If I want to accomplish something, but I'm in fear, guess what? That thought, which I'm holding, that thought will come through and eclipse my desire, my intention. It will knock it out of the way. That's why any alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, dead bodies, my true purpose came through. I want to get back in the country, and I didn't do anything. It will come through. If you're lying to someone, if you manipulate someone, that eventually will shine through like the sun shining through the tree. Here's the deal. If we truly wish to live consciously, which is what deliberate intention is, it's not those random thoughts, then we must establish the link between our thoughts, and our resulting behavior. How do we do that? Well, here we go down the rabbit hole. Hang on. Rabbit hole is something that we don't think necessarily is possible, or it may be confusing. But once we get down there, we're going to find some stuff that we didn't know was down there. So here we go. Just to show you what it was like, what some other people may have thought a rabbit hole was. 1840, anyone traveling 30 miles per hour, they're going to suffocate. 1878, electric lights, they're not worthy of serious attention. 1901, again, more than a century ago, we can't fly. There's no way we can fly. 26, the foolish idea of shooting the moon, unless you don't believe, unless you thought that it was done in the studio. Another scientist says that to harness energy locked up in matter is impossible. Well, don't tell that guy, don't tell this guy that. Now I'm going to go into E equal mc squared for just a second. If you haven't seen it, you don't know what it is, it's easy. I'm telling you, I'm going to simplify it because I'm a simple guy. Energy and mass are two forms of the same thing. Firecrackers or fireworks is energy. Mass is a firecracker, right? Broccoli is mass. Once you eat it, it becomes calories. So energy and mass are two forms of the same thing. C squared is the speed of light times the speed of light. Now, how fast is that? And if you think you got a grasp on that, well, think again, because it's almost impossible. Here's what Einstein says. Now, hold on. Like I said, if you want to argue him, not me. Concerning matter, we have been all wrong. What we've called matter is energy, whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. Okay, let's go a little farther with that and see what we can come up with. By the way, that was 1905, and we still haven't gotten a grasp on that yet. So, you know, when you watch a film, you're not watching a film, you're watching a series of slides, series of pictures, but the brain thinks that it's moving. Well, it's the same with the vibration of the energy of what we're looking at. So we see energy vibrating. Each form has its own vibration. We perceive the image based on our interpretation, our mental models of what we already know. If we don't know it and don't have a mental model, it's really hard for us to see it. So when you're learning something new, you don't have anything to attach it to. It's like learning to juggle when you first start. It's like, what? But then as you do it, you develop the neural pathways. Same thing with this. Let's say you're looking for a package in the pantry, and whatever the package is has always been green, and all of a sudden this time it's red. Your brain won't see it because it's not in vibration. You're looking for the wrong thing. Your spouse comes in, moves you away, and says, "What are you, blind?" That's for us guys. That happens to us all the time. But the second part of this is we do not see a tree. We don't see anything for that matter. We see the light vibration reflecting off the image of our brain coming from our mental models. As Einstein said, there is no matter, it's only energy. So this light speed going, the speed of light times the speed of light, that's all we can get out of it. But thank goodness we can. It vibrates at its pen vibration, at a glass of water vibration, because of our mental models and because of the vibration. Are you still with me, sort of? Kind of nod or throw something at me. All right, here we go. Where do we go from here? Whatever shape our thoughts form, the field takes form energetically. Okay, so what's the field? Einstein called it the field, by the way. Let me describe it. Be careful on this. I've got some more stuff to support it. I can't see what that says there. The human brain, where'd it go? The human brain, human mind and body are not distinct and separate from their environment. They're a packet of pulsating power. It's energy, constantly interacting with the vast energy of sea. In other words, it's an interconnected universe. We're all connected in some way. There's a film called What the Bleep Do We Know? And one of the guys says, there's no out there, because everything's connected. Now, let me describe it a little better. Let's hope a little better. The field is described as packets of energy, quantum of energy, which become visible as we impress our energy upon it. It forms into particles. The image imposed in the field, the pocket of energy, turns into a particle, like I just said. Remember, everything is energy. Everything. What moves it from energy to particle is the imagination with intention. I've heard it referred to, imagination is the God within us. Remember what you were most proud of. You had mental, physical, emotional, spiritual alignment. That emotion is the language of the universe. Without emotion, those things that you felt, that you accomplished, that you felt most proud of, would never have happened. And then imagination is the gift we've been given to express our intention. Idea, image with emotion creates reality. So this is a book, pretty new. I think it was the end of last year. It's Astonishing Science of How Your Brain Creates Material Reality. And I want to give you some information about this. He says new discoveries, and these are all these sciences. All of these sciences have discovered that new discoveries in epigenetics, that's above the gene, neuroscience, the study of the brain, electromagnetism, everything has an electric field, phenomena, vibrational phenomena, that's cymatics, and quantum physics show that thoughts, this is the point, thoughts are profoundly creative. He goes on to say that recent studies show that focused concentration on any subject doubles the number of connections in your brain related to that subject. So you're building neural pathways, you're building belief, you're building energy to create. He also says the neurons in our brains act like magnets. They generate fields that shape matter around them. All right, now, some of you may say, what the heck is going on? But again, give it time to sink in if you're unfamiliar with it, because this is the way it works. Again, this stuff should be taught in our grade schools and should have been taught in our grade school years ago. But we're fighting it because the thought that nothing is real, that nothing is stable. But we know already that everything vibrates. We know that a lead pipe vibrates. We know that the old house expands and makes noise in the day when it's hot like this, and then at night you hear it creak and cool down. It's vibrating. So we have a large electromagnetic field around our bodies, approximately 5 meters. That's like 15 feet or so. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine, an actor, Tony Hody, actually went to WVU, was pretty successful, and he'd gotten an opportunity to meet a number of celebrities. He said that the most memorable was when Jack Nicholson walked into a room. He said the room exploded with energy. And he said the whole time he was there, it was like a vibration that was overwhelming. Now, you've all experienced something like that when somebody very charismatic walks into a room and you go, wow, the energy changes, you experience that energy, and it can be of twofold. It can be of high, vibrant, loving, exciting energy, or it can be that gloom and doom where we all walk out like, you know, oh my God, you know. So we know that we've known that that's affected us. And some of you, many of you have done the same thing and are aware when you do it. So here's the deal. Intentions are the directions we give the field. And if you want to know what kind of directions you've been giving the field, look around you. Look at your life. Look at your relationships. Look at your possessions. Look at where you are in life, your station in life, your experience in life, your joy or lack thereof. Look around you. Those are that's what you've been feeding the field. Mostly saying. So here's what Einstein says about it. Imagination is more important than knowledge. For knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there will ever be to know and understand. So before computers, before flight, before cars, before anything that exists, before the wheel, it was already out there. It was waiting for intention to shape it. So whatever we haven't created yet, it's out there. It is waiting for us to impress, have intention on the field to shape it into a material outcome. Here's an example. Well, let me just say, most of you probably know this quote. I believe it's one of the most overused quotes and least understood. And the reason why is because he says you must become the change you want to see in the world. When I said earlier, when you're in fear, you can't be in faith. When you're in hate, you can't be in love. So if you want to create something out of nothing, you have to be in that vibrational pattern. Otherwise, remember, the field picks up on it. It's going to take what you give it. It's a law. It's going to take what you give it. So here's what Gandhi did. He defeated an entire military of a nation through peace and love. 20 million people became the change they wanted to see in the world. Now grasp what that means. They defeated an army. And if you've never seen the film or read anything about Gandhi, I mean, it's a horrifying thing that happened, but it's unbelievable and amazing. And of course, Martin Luther King modeled his approach, civil rights movement after that. So how do we make this work in our world? How do we adapt it? How do we bring it down to something concrete so that we can create? Well, motivation, first of all, is overrated. We have a tendency to believe that motivation comes from something outside of us, and that's pretty much not true. If you were motivated to win, to perform in a way that got you a trip to Hawaii, you may bust your chops to get that trip to Hawaii, but when you come back, there's nothing there to motivate you. So that work is not, it's not long-term. It's not sustainable. Intrinsic. What you want to be, do, and have and become is internal. So I'll give you an example. There's a company I worked with, a guy who was in sales, hated his job, wanted to quit. Manager wanted to fire him, very poor performer. But we did a thing called the Values Index. By the way, I'm going to have Amy select 3 people. I will take you through the Values Index, and I will let you take the assessment, and then I will debrief you with it. It's highly effective, used all over the world. This is people like Anthony Robbins, people like Marshall Goldsmith use this over and over again with their employees. Everyone has a unique mix of personal drivers and motivators, and there are 7 dimensions that identify that. You may have a sense of what those are, but once you take it, you'll say, oh, I see. Now, let me give you the example. The guy who was not selling, we found out that his lowest dimension was economic. Money didn't matter to him. We found out that his highest was altruism, helping others. They sold defibrillators. When he found out that for every defibrillator he sold, he saved an average of 2 lives. Guess who became the #1 salesman every quarter after that? That is the power of knowing what motivates you, that is intrinsic, that comes from the heart to achieve something intentionally. So how do we do it? We're almost finished, actually. Motivation and goal achievement have to be connected. Understanding what motivates you, or knowing what that is, and not going with, if you set a goal and you're not achieving it, it's probably because it doesn't motivate you. Aligning your goals with your motivation. Remember, mental, physical, ethical, spiritual, emotional, all in alignment so that you can affect the field. And then the last one is, because we're human and we get distracted, why don't we develop a system that allows us to achieve our goals? Now, I know there are many different coaching approaches out there, leadership development approaches, systems that work, no question. I just want to share with you what ours is in a nutshell. This is simply the tip of the iceberg, but setting a goal, knowing what you want, and motivating you is critical. What are your motivators? So if you set a goal that doesn't match that, then there's almost no chance of achieving it. But what's the goal? It's a SMART goal: specific, measurable, attainable, realistically high. Got a target time. So what's the goal? The rewards. That helps you link emotionally to the goal. So if I do this, this, and this, I'm going to feel good about myself. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to develop a better relationship. I'm going to get, promoted, whatever rewards you get from it. The consequences are negative consequences. If I don't achieve that, am I going to continue to live the same life that I'm going to continue to do the same things I've always done? So both of those are to kind of jumpstart you, to motivate you intrinsically so that you achieve the goal. Now, what are the options? Let me give you an example. When I was I went on a bike ride. We had planned to do a trip, my nephew and I, from Hancock, Maryland to Washington, D.C., 2 days, 60 miles both days, I think. And we had done all the things. What are the options? What are we going to eat? How do we prepare? How do we get in shape? All of those things. And we developed action steps. So we got there. We even did a thing. So what if we get in some sort of trouble, the obstacle? Well, here's what happened. We get up in the morning, it's pouring rain. And the trails in Morgantown are pristine. They're beautifully maintained. Well, we were on, after the hotel for about a mile and a half, we're on asphalt. And as soon as we get off the asphalt, it's like a tractor trail, grass in the middle and deep trench tracks. Filled with water, we went from something like 16, 17, 18 miles an hour to like 4, 5, and 6 miles an hour. I panicked. I said, oh my God, it's thoughts, monkey mind, boom, boom, boom. What's going to happen? How's it going to? And then all of a sudden I thought, hey, I have a goal. I have an intention. And this peace came over me, and we just took it, whatever came. And we had a great time. One of the rewards was spending a couple days with my nephew alone. So that was a great experience for me. But that is what intention does. It balances and aligns the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual part of you so that you can achieve and live the life you want, create the organization you want. One of my favorite authors, Eckhart Tolle, says we're compelled to think, feel, and act in a certain way according to the conditioning of our minds. The mind, conditioned as it is by the past, always seeks to recreate what it knows and is familiar with. Even when it's painful, it's familiar. So again, if you're down in doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you can't create something new because you're in the monkey mind. Stick with me on this. Whatsoever things are lovely and of good report. What's important to you? What do you want to experience in life? What kind of joy do you want to have? What kind of relationships do you want to have? Think on these things. He's talking about intention. For we become that with which we are in rapport. Vibration. There is nothing to change but our concept of ourself. As Gandhi says, we have to become the change. We have to become the change we want to see in the world. As soon as we succeed in transforming ourselves, our world will dissolve and reshape itself into harmony with that which our change affirms. So that's the power of intention. Just so you know, you are far more powerful than you could ever imagine. Thank you. What questions do you have?
Grant, there's a great quote that was left in the chat box, another Neville Goddard quote. Man is only limited by weakness of attention and poverty of imagination.
Well, there you have it. Who wrote that, if I may ask?
Neville Goddard.
No, I mean, who put it in the chat box?
Liz Manso.
Oh, go Liz.
Yeah, well read.
Yes.
Well, we have some comments from the chat. One was a follow-up to the person who lost 132 pounds over 3 years, remarked that the transformation took sacrifice and constant personal mental feedback. Can you talk a little bit about how you stay in the position of that positive mental feedback loop? You know, how do you stay there with the vibrations?
You want me to do it, or you want Matt to do it? You want me to explain that? Or do you want the person who wrote it to explain?
Well, I didn't want to put him on the spot. I'll give him an opportunity to if he'd like to.
Well, let me just. You good, Matt? You want me to? You want to do it? Okay, go ahead, Matt. Matt will do it. You can unmute him.
Okay.
All right. So am I good?
All
right. So the constant personal mental feedback that I was referencing, the actions that caused it was a constant mind game. I had to constantly go back. Everybody talks about going back to the drawing board. Well, it's something that you constantly have to go back to and remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. At least that's what worked for me. And even in the process of going to do, even when I didn't, there'd be times when I would just be laying down and wouldn't feel like getting up because I was just my body was sore. I was tired. I had had a terrible day at work, whatever, fill in the blank. There'd be those times when I had to constantly kind of realign and refocus. And what helped me was constantly going back to those motivational quotes, really diving in. I had a math teacher back in a math teacher who was really more of a philosophy teacher, if you will, than anything else. And he would always he would always write a quote of the day up on the board. Before class started, he would have each person read it. We'd read it, and then he'd give us about 2 minutes to come up with a response as to what we thought or what that quote meant to us. And so I took that and started using that on myself.
So here's the deal. He had a system of sorts, right? That system was he kept going back to the same thing and over again. As it began, as the human being, the monkey mind start to take over, the disbelief, I won't be able to make it. He went back to a system that kept him focused. And my guess is you had to have a strong image, Matt, of what you wanted to look like and feel like at the end of this. So that image is everything. Remember, image affects the field. Image is energy, and then what supports it is the emotion behind it. Any other questions or comments?
We have a question from the chat box, which was, what do you do if you can't figure out what you want to accomplish? There are so many options. Maybe the word is to decide.
Well, yeah, but again, it goes back to what really motivates you. What are the things you like? What are the things you are really good at? Now, those aren't always the same, but they usually are. What do I really like to do and what am I good at? I was told I'm good at chopping vegetables. I love to cook, but chopping vegetables is not my favorite. They say I'm good at it, but not always the same. But the point is, what do you really want? And then why does that motivate you? What are the rewards you get out of that? And once you've determined what those things are, then you develop that system, or you choose someone who has a system that helps you get there. And there are other things you can do. There are many ways. I mean, even the old What Color is Your Parachute book about career is a great old book that they keep updating over the years that gives you an opportunity to see what you're best suited for as a career. But there are many ways to do that. And it's just deciding, but deciding in a way that matches your motivation, your dimension that is your strongest dimensions. So your values. Any other comments, questions?
We had a quote in the chat box from Calvin, and the quote is, "Motivation is a sugar high," from Tom Grover. The commenter says, "When you set your mind to your goal, you either want it or you don't."
It's a great point, and that tells you if you're motivated to do it, if it's intrinsic or extrinsic. Again, I can win the trip to Hawaii, and that's great, but it's not sustainable. It's not long-term. It's bubblegum for a little while, and then the flavor's gone. So what is it that keeps me alive, that promotes my well-being and the joy that I want out of life long-term? So that's the motivation component. Anything else?
A question from the chat: how does one recognize how fear is negatively affecting his or her intentions and move forward regardless?
The feedback comes from the universe. That's what Matt was talking about, getting feedback. If you are uncomfortable, if you are worried, if you're upset, the feedback is telling you that the vibration is not at a higher vibration. Again, if I'm fearful, I'm going to be chewing my cheek. I'm going to be putting my shoulders up in my ears. I'm going to be self-sabotaging in ways over and over and over again. I mean, when you feel peace, when you feel, becoming the change you want to see in the world, when you become love, when you become confidence, that's what you are. Right? If you're in Florida, can you snow ski? Can you surf in Colorado? No, you can only experience what's available in that state. So if you're in fear, that's all you're going to experience. So the feedback will tell you, I'm not loving, I'm not comfortable, I'm not happy, I'm not this, I'm certainly not in love. I'm probably in fear. So the feedback will tell you, what is it in certain parts of your body? What are your thoughts? What are your results? That's the way to tell. That makes sense? Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just thinking that was an interesting balance between trying to recognize inner peace, and as well as you had that quote earlier about it was, the familiar, I can't remember what it was. It was like what is familiar is comfortable.
Oh yeah.
So it's a balance between leaving your comfort zone and maintaining peace or seeking peace.
Yes, the mind conditioned as is by the past always seeks to recreate what it knows and is familiar with, even if it's painful. It's familiar. So we're afraid to step out of that comfort zone. The deal is you want to become comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's what gives us, that's imagination that takes us to where we haven't been. And again, the field will give us back what we're looking for.